Hey, welcome everyone in this new podcast episode. I'm here today with Scott Meter. He's the director of sales at Raima. Scott, pleasure to have you on board.
Thank you very much, Jeremy. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, perfect. So we have a lot of things that we want to discuss and cover today. You guys are basically working in the database, embedded database systems, targeting like the aerospace and defense. I have like a lot of questions for you on the technology, on the strategy, on the company. So, but let's start first with maybe a little bit more about like your background. What's your personal background before joining Rema?
Great. This it froze again. Sorry.
Uh, it's okay. I will remove that part. Scott, what is your personal background? This is the first question. The person's background before joining Rema.
Yeah, actually, so my education was actually in music theory and recording, hence the guitars on the wall. I've done some things with music, but my main focus has been in sales roles. Before I joined Rema I actually joined in '94. Before I joined Rema for 6 years, I was managing a telemarketing outfit that was in the warranty business, basically warranting like appliances and home appliances and those type of things for customers and consumers. But then I joined Raima in '94, and I really got into the technology space and specifically the embedded system space. And so that's been my background for the last 30 years.
Wow, 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 wow! It's pretty impressive. Like a long time you've been working for that company. So
Yes.
when and when you joined Rema, what was the situation of the company? What was like just like the company just being created at the time?
Well, actually, so it was founded in '82 by two engineers from Boeing, Wayne Warren and Randy Merlot.
Okay.
And they were software engineers at Boeing working on a project, and they were looking for a very high performance, lightweight database for an aerospace and defense application. And they couldn't find anything on the market that met their specific needs. So they kind of did a homegrown version of a database
Hmm.
technology, used it for the project. It was very successful. And then they got funding and additional resources, joined them, and they basically created Rama.
Hmm.
It was initially created as a small footprint library called DB Vista. And it was very high performance, linkable library that you embed within your application. You link it within your code, and it manages data behind the scenes. You don't have to have a DBA to administer the database like you do an Oracle or a SQL Server or some enterprise database, but it was a very small footprint database uh, that really met their needs for their particular application, where it just kind of did its thing behind the scene and you never had to mess with it.
Hmm.
And we've had several companies from Boeing join us, Raytheon, Lockheed, General Dynamics. Companies have joined us with a kind of mission critical application since then. And yeah, so we're doing a lot of things, not only in aerospace and defense, but in several markets.
So can you just explain like let's if we just back up a little bit like so an
Mm-hmm.
embedded database like
Yeah.
especially like what's the specificity of an aerospace and defense embedded database versus like any other database? Like why do we need like a different type of database?
Well, really, anywhere it can fit anywhere. It's not specific necessarily to aerospace and defense, although with aerospace and defense, it's very critical that you have it's obviously reliable. It can be up 24/7. It's secure.
Mm,
It's fully embedded. It's a small footprint. You don't have to administer it. Kind of does its thing behind the scenes, but that can literally also play into other applications, right? Automotive with
mm,
autonomous driving cars nowadays. It can
mm,
play into industrial automation, IIoT, IoT products. It can play in a lot of different verticals. So a lightweight database isn't necessarily specific to aerospace and defense. It can play in a lot of different arenas.
mm. But all the different industries that you mentioned are
Yeah.
somehow safety critical industries. I would say like where The regulation is important. You mentioned like autonomous driving. That's, we know that there is very very high regulation in
Yeah,
that space. Aerospace and defense with the same.
yeah.
Um, that's where those requirements, those security requirements, those cyber requirements are important, and you need to make sure that's where you shine. That's the sweet spot of a product like yours, right?
Absolutely. I mean, from cybersecurity, with making sure you have the proper encryption, to any kind of you adhere to certain standards. That's important in those type of applications.
Okay, no, sounds good. So you say like they created the founders created the company. You started to work with Boeing. How did the company evolve? Just historically, just to
Yeah,
as an overview.
yeah, absolutely. So the company actually evolved after the Boeing application. There was investment from companies like IBM. Back then, I think they were referred to as Rome.
Hmm.
And some other companies got invested and said, "Hey, we would like this similar product to be used in our type of application. It's not aerospace and defense, but we'd like this a similar database." And they invested in Raima and helped create the company and really kind of bootstrap it and get us the funding we needed to move forward. And more customers joined, and we evolved the product along the way. It started out again as DB Vista. It was rebranded as Raima Database Manager.
Hmm.
And actually, with our latest release, which we're on version 16 now,
Wow.
here in 2024, we rebranded as just the Raima DB. There was times where there was confusion on whether we managed databases or we were a database, so we rebranded as Raima DB. And yeah, so it's evolved, and again, we're on version 16, and we've done a lot of great things in a lot of different applications.
Perfect. So if we focus, because the main focus here is obviously like the aerospace and defense. If we
Yeah.
focus on the aerospace and defense, can
Mm-hmm.
you mention like some of the different use cases, for example, that those database can be used, for example?
Absolutely. Yeah. So some of our key customers and use cases would be like Boeing with their AWACS, the Airborne Warning and Control System. We're on board the AWACS on embedded boards on VxWorks there, and we manage data coming in showing whether it could be potentially enemy threats in the area. It's also been integrated into their latest version called the Wedge Tail, which will come out in the next few years. General Dynamics, we're embedded inside their Marine helicopter project there,
Mhm.
storing vehicle maintenance information, that type of thing. Same with Lockheed, where there are actually test stands that come along the aircraft, the
Mhm.
military aircraft, before they go into the theater and fly out. And it tests the parts and looks for any areas that could be needing maintenance or attention.
Mhm.
Um, and then Elbit Systems, that's another one overseas that integrates us into a mission control system. So we're in a lot of different aerospace and defense applications.
I have a quick question. So when the
Yeah,
database is, for example, deployed, like when you mentioned, like on helicopter management system,
yeah,
those, since we know that those OEM are they need also tier one, tier two to basically supply their different subsystems.
yeah.
Those different electronic system in some case may have or may need like a database. I'm curious to know, like, do they use like the main database, or do you, it's often that you see like the entire supply chain having different database that still communicate with the main system, I would say. How does that work? Just.
Yeah, well, actually, so sometimes we're integrated with other database technologies. In one
Okay.
case in particular, we're typically on the edge. We're in the embedded board. We're on the aircraft. We're collecting data from the sensors in the field. We're in those type of areas is where you see our lightweight database technology. But we might interface with some corporate backend system or mission planning system or some big Oracle system. So a lot of times you have to replicate data or move data to a backend system so the two databases can communicate. And
Hmm.
we definitely have technology that can do that. So we might collect data out on the edge, but we need to interface with a backend corporate system or enterprise system or maybe even a cloud system to move data into the cloud. And so we can do that through our replication technology.
No, sounds good. Thank you so much for sharing all that. Um, let's talk about like the certification. I mean, we know that
Yeah.
we mentioned like regulation is really important in the aerospace and defense.
Hmm.
Can you touch on like, I mean, obviously like some of the different standard guidelines that you need to comply with, and how those impact like a database product like yours, for example?
Yeah. So there are different certifications. Typically, what you see in aerospace and defense is DO 178.
Mm,
That's what the certification is referred to, and it's a software consideration in airborne systems and equipment certification, such that you need to get a document that says your software, we reviewed every line of code and approved the commercial software for aerospace and defense systems. And this is a process that is very in depth and can take a good 1 or 2 years. It really depends on what kind of process you have to document and all and so forth. But
mm,
it's pretty intense process. We have not yet been through the whole entire process, but we have prepped for that type of process, especially in some of the other areas. I know we're focused on aerospace and defense right now, but for instance, in autonomous driving vehicles, which
mm,
we're being embedded into, we have to
mm.
adhere to certain standards there. So the documentation and the processes have been put in place for certification in the aerospace and defense area as well.
Sounds good. So you say like so far in general, like you've been
Hmm.
helping your customers to go through those processes. That's typically like how that happened, but not like providing like a
Yeah,
already certified database where you say of
exactly.
this. Yeah, yeah, which
Yeah,
makes sense.
yeah, yeah. And I can
So
talk. Oh, go ahead.
yeah,
Yeah.
no, no, go ahead, go ahead. I'll let you finish.
I was just going to say, yeah, historically, like you were saying, um, typically when customers integrate our technology now in an
Mm,
aerospace and defense application that has to go through certification, they embed our database and then they certify the entire product. Um,
mm,
if we were to have a certified library, if you embed a certified database, then that whole section of data management is 80% already certified and can get them to market faster. So there's
mm.
a benefit in having that pre-certified.
Okay. Is that something that you're working on?
Yeah, absolutely. So we are, as I mentioned, in the autonomous driving space. We're looking at undergoing some of the groundwork to do that for autonomous driving, um, which will help us for when the right project comes along for military, aerospace, and defense type area. We'll be able to be prepped and prepared to certify our database libraries. Right now, that
Mm.
hasn't been a high requirement for our customers to have it pre-certified, but I know that it will be very beneficial to them when the right customer comes along and project comes along and says, let's get this pre-certified, and that makes sense to our application. Yeah.
Do you know? I mean, what how that process would look like, for example, for because it's
Yeah.
very specific for database. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. To certify a library, so the process, again, it's a pretty in-depth process. You have a third party that will come in and look at your software development plan. Uh,
Mm.
this is looking at the development life cycle, the roles, the responsibilities that are involved. They'll look at a software verification plan that you have to have. It's how the software is going to be validated, tested, the environments and the process and the criteria that's set up to do that.
Mm.
They'll look at the software configuration management plan, how the software is stored, changes controlled, and how it's documented. All that's looked at. You have to have a software quality plan.
Mm.
How do we assure that the written software is following certain processes and objectives?
Mm.
And you do a full code review, a full documentation review. And then you have the software tool qualification plan. What tools we used in the development and testing during the process. How do we choose the tools? What do they do? What do they validate? So there's a
Mm.
whole criteria they look at, and they're pretty much it's pretty stringent. They overlook every line of code. You pay for each line of code to be reviewed, and then you come up with a certified package and a certificate that says, okay, you are certified for aerospace and defense applications DO 178.
Okay, sounds good. And I guess, like, I mean, because on the on the competitive landscape, I mean, we know that there is like different type of database. I mean, like the open
Mm-hmm.
source and also like more for various application. This certification definitely brings like definitely like a high value added, I would say, like to your product. Can you just describe, like, I would say, like the competitive landscape, and see like which solution is good for what use case, and where do you guys differ on that market?
Yeah, absolutely. So, like you mentioned, there's the open source market. There's the NoSQL market that's been hot the last 10 so years. And then there's the commercial solutions like we fall into. And there's benefits to everything. Open source has its place. Although in aerospace and defense, I won't say it's not used, but I would say that there's oftentimes that we have to sign that says our product has no open source in it, because there can be potential risks involved in using open source, where you have to open
Mm,
source your code, or there's more exposure potentially. So there's more risk involved in some cases. It really depends. Open source has different licensing models that you can adhere to kind of manage that risk. But there are times where aerospace and defense applications don't want open source technology, so they're looking more for a commercial solution. Now that leaves kind
mm,
of NoSQL or commercial. And with the NoSQL option, there's no notion of a schema, so it's more unstructured um,
mm,
data, and that may fit what you're looking at doing. So you have to really decide: is that what we want, or are we looking for more of a database like Raima that has more of a notion of a schema, more of a relational technology that fits into kind of a standard, meets some of the standards that you're looking for. So there's different use cases for each, for sure.
mm. You mentioned Oracle as well at some point. What's the how does that
Yeah.
fit, like the landscape?
So Oracle is more of an enterprise. Well, it depends, right? They have different divisions within their company. Oracle has the enterprise database. They're 12G. I think they may be up to 13G now, but they have their enterprise product that runs your whole business, has a lot of bells and whistles and tools. It's very, several gigs to install. We're worth, 300, 500 kilobytes to install. So we're a small footprint database made for edge devices, embedded systems running on boards, or out gathering data from sensors, that type of thing. We could be on the side of your house in a smart meter on software
Mm,
there, where you wouldn't necessarily install a big enterprise database Oracle. That just couldn't fit. So, but Oracle does have an embedded division. But typically, they target kind of a different area than we do. Not quite as compact, or kind of a zero maintenance free, lightweight kind of system for IoT. That's not really their target in
mm.
today's environment. So yeah,
No, sounds good. It's great. Thank you for sharing that
yeah,
that feedback. It's always good to try to better
yep.
understand, like, what's the different product for which different application, and how to best choose
Mm-hmm.
those different products. What's your vision on the future on that market? Where do you see big technology trends impacting that market, and where are we going?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this world is all about data everywhere, every place, anytime, on any device, and it's all about big data. So, there's massive amounts of data being generated, and that data somehow has to be made sense of.
Mm,
It has to be locally stored, and that's the beauty of a technology like Raima, right? There's a niche for it. It can be on the device. Let's say the device is gathering massive amounts of data on a device, and that the data eventually has to go back to a corporate system or a cloud system. But that um, let's say the connection is intermittent or goes down, you have to have data stored safely locally on the device. So you need a database out on the device itself. And we also see, so we see IoT, we see big data, we see lots of data being gathered out on the edge, closer to the source of origin. That's kind of becoming a very hot market right now. It's a multi-billion-dollar market that's starting to grow, because you can't always rely on that data going back to a big enterprise or a corporate system, or have that delay to make a decision.
Mm.
So you want a decision to be made quicker out on the edge. So you want to store that data out on the edge device, and that's where Raima plays. But certainly, you also see in today's market where it's going, that data has to be moved into the cloud, right? So you can't just have it on the device. You have to summarize that data, and you have to move that data eventually back to some corporate system or cloud system for permanent storage. And we allow you to do that through replicating. You summarize the data on the device itself, and then you're able to take that data that's important and we move it to the cloud system, or where there's permanent storage or reporting or analysis that has to be done. We allow you to do that with Raima.
Is the space market, is that space, new space, is that like a good opportunity, because that market is growing like a lot with new commercial players? Is that like a
Oh
market
yeah,
where as well, like, yeah, you.
yeah. It's definitely a growing market. You can look at Gartner and some of the other reports right now, and the IoT and the embedded space and embedded systems and storage. Big data being managed closer to the source of origin. That whole edge program or edge processing, edge data management is really a hot item right now.
Mm. Sounds good. Thank you so
Yeah.
much, Scott, for sharing all of that. Any other feedback, advice that you want to share with other company that may evolve in that environment?
Yeah. I would just say any team that's developing software, they have to look at the options. Is it better for open source? Is it NoSQL data management? Is it an enterprise type product? Can you deal with the latency and maybe just use a cloud database or some other type of database management tool? Just really do a lot of research. Kind of measure twice, cut once, kind of thing. What my dad always said, and when you are making something in wood, right? You want to measure twice and really look at the processes, look at all the data management and the methods and what you want to store and what is the right fit for you. Is it best to maybe build your own, or there's a lot of man years that go into building a technology like Raima. So I would definitely choose wisely and really decide what is the best fit for your particular software application. But there are tons of software is being developed right now. Everything needs to have data management integrated into it. So, just definitely map it out well and decide what do you need. What are your, is there low memory requirements? Is there requirements for in memory or on disk storage? Just map out everything that you need and decide then what technologies might fit best for you.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Scott. Thank you so much for
Yeah.
sharing all of that insights with us. Really happy to have you on board today.
Yeah. Well, thank you for having me, Jeremy.
Awesome. Take care, Scott.
Thank you. You too.